Good evening, everyone, and this is going to be my third attempt at doing a review on this film. Last couple of times I tried, I went over my time of 15 minutes, so this time I might have to do this as a part one, part two, because I have a lot to say about this movie. So it's a very hard movie to sum up in just a few words. So this is Les Miserables. And I'm going to talk about it until about 10 after 9. So just to make sure I don't run out of time here. Here we go. Yeah, Les Miserables. I never got the chance to see this musical on stage, so I can't really compare it to the stage version. But I grew up listening to the music. I love the music. I love every song in it. And I know the story quite well. I read the book, so I grew up with a huge love for the book. And just to give you an idea of the story, it's a very complicated story that's hard to sum up in a few simple words, but I'll make an attempt here. It's about a man named Jean Valjean, and it was set against the backdrop of 19th century France. Jean Valjean is an ex-prisoner who is hunted for decades by a ruthless policeman, Gervais, after he breaks parole. He's put in prison for stealing a loaf of bread. That's all he does, to feed his starving family. But he keeps escaping over and over again, and he keeps getting put back in jail, and eventually he's set free after being in prison for 15 years or longer. I can't remember exactly how long it is. And it's the story of how he breaks out of prison and changes his life around. He's taken in by a kindly priest who, and he steals from the priest, but the priest lets it go. He tells the police, "I gave him all this silver. I gave, And then he says to him, you need to use this silver to become a better man. I've bought your soul with this." So he moves to Paris and changes his life around. He becomes a much better man. He becomes like a saint, pretty much, helping everybody he can. He becomes the mayor of Vigo, which is a district in Paris. And throughout the film, he's haunted by Gervais, this policeman, who's just totally obsessed with capturing him and just won't let it go. It's basically what Gervais lives for, just to stalk and hunt down Jean Valjean. So 90% of this movie is sung. They pretty much transferred every song from the stage musical into the movie. Usually with musicals, it's a little more condensed, but this isn't condensed at all. I think that was one issue people had with it. They thought it was way too long, and that it should have been faster paced, I guess. But really, if you lose one song in this musical, it would bring the whole movie down in a way, because every song is so vital to the story of this. And if you're not a fan of melodrama, or if you're not a fan of this musical in general, you probably will not like this. If you are a fan of Les Miserables, I think you will love it. It's much more intimate and powerful, I think. Stage shows, are great because you're in a live audience watching it. But it's not as intimate as a movie can be, and the director, Tom Hooper, really took this material and he made it much more intimate. There's lots of close-ups on the actors' faces. The emotions are all very intense in this story. All the musical numbers are given a stronger emotional intensity as well. All the actors in this movie are fantastic. It's hard to single out one above another because they're all such vital characters in this story. Jean Valjean is played by Hugh Jackman, who I'm sure you know by now is nominated for an Academy Award for Best Actor of the Year. He did not win. Daniel Day-Lewis went on to win for that. But Hugh Jackman, I've never seen him do anything like this before. He was so great in this film. It's a far cry from anything I've seen him do before, like playing Wolverine in the X-Men movies was the only thing I knew about Hugh Jackman. I loved him in those movies too, but he really shows what a great actor he is in this. And not only a great actor, but a great singer too. He sings as if it really is his first method of communicating. And He has the physical presence of Jean Valjean. Like, Hugh Jackman is a really big guy, of course. I'm sure you know that. And also he has a great vulnerability and a great sensitivity as well in this role, and a huge heart. So he brings all that to the role. And he was the perfect Jean Valjean. I don't think they could have cast a better actor for this role. He just captures every emotional nuance of the character, all the moments of vulnerability that Jean Valjean has, all the moments of doubt as he's being chased by Gervais, this relentless police officer. And he keeps being haunted by his past. It's, trying to escape his past and yet being haunted by it at the same time. And he falls in love with Fantine, a young factory worker played by Anne Hathaway. And she is fired from her job for having a child out of wedlock, little Cosette, who's shown at the bottom here. The little girl here with their wind blowing dramatically in the breeze there. So he falls in love with Fantine and, takes care of her after she becomes sick with tuberculosis, and promises to take care of her child who's staying with innkeepers. And Anne Hathaway playing Fantine in this was remarkable. She basically represents every person who has ever suffered unfairly in this world, which is, of course, many people. She's a good person, never did anything wrong, and yet she is forced out onto the street. She loses everything. She's forced to prostitute herself. And she was remarkable in this too, and she sings I Dreamed a Dream. I've never heard such an amazing rendition of that song. She sings it to the truth of the song, which is about having your dreams completely taken away from you, like completely shattered, and finding yourself in the lowest pit of degradation imaginable, and and having to live with that, having to harden your heart and just be strong and carry on even though your life is like a living hell. And she has to carry on for her daughter. She has to keep making money to support her daughter, and that's all she cares about. That's her one hope that she clings to. So, and she sings it so powerfully. Just, her head is shaved, she's really thin and dirty and has had all her teeth pulled out in an earlier scene. And when she sings that song, it's hard to watch. It's so emotionally wrenching. Like, she's crying during the whole performance. And she was just amazing in this, Anne Hathaway. She's a great actress in any movie she's in, but she really showed what a truly vulnerable and emotional and intense actress that she can be. Even when you strip away her beauty, she's just... you can't really strip away Anne Hathaway's beauty. She's so naturally beautiful anyways, but she was really great in this, even though she's not in the movie that long, just for the first, I would say, half hour or so. But the moments that she is in the film really does... her story carries through the rest of the film, the message of her story and her suffering, and how Jean Valjean has to kind of transcend that for Cosette and give Cosette a good life, in honor of her mother. So, and Russell Crowe playing Gervais here, I thought he was fantastic. I really liked him a lot. Some people didn't like him. They thought he was a little too cold in the role, that there wasn't much emotional complexity from him. And a lot of people didn't think he was the best singer either. Although, he does have a rock and roll background, so, he's not an opera singer by any means. His voice is very kind of low and a little gravelly, but I like his voice a lot. I think it works really well for Gervais. If you've seen Russell Crowe in other movies, he has a very commanding presence as an actor. He's great at playing really commanding roles. He has great physical presence as well, and very striking eyes, especially. And even though he doesn't show much emotion in this, there's so much going on behind the eyes, which is what I think makes his performance so great. You really see he's a man that's very tortured, by a lot of inner demons. He doesn't really understand why there's so much suffering in the world. He doesn't understand mercy or God. And he's convinced that Jean Valjean is a criminal, that, you know, even though Jean Valjean is a completely good man and has changed his ways, Gervais just can't see that. All he sees is the criminal. So he's always trying to, you know, tear him down and make his life a living hell, basically. So, and he's a very tragic character, Gervais. Those of you who have read about him in, you know, the great book Les Miserables, or seen him on stage, near the end of the movie, it all just falls apart for Gervais, and he ends up, not to give it away, spoiler alert, but he ends up ultimately killing himself. Because he can't really do anything against Jean Valjean, because Jean Valjean keeps forgiving him and saying, you know, just leave me alone, you know. Why do you, you know, just leave me alone, Gervais. There's nothing I blame you for. Just let me be. And ultimately, Gervais cannot let him be. And when Jean Valjean forgives him, it's like a knife to his heart. You know, he feels cold inside. He can't really find God or the truth of existence, and he ends up killing himself. So, very tragic character. I have about 2 more minutes to talk, and then I'll have to move on to part 2 later. Amanda Seyfried playing, of course, Cosette in here. She plays the older Cosette. The child's at the bottom, and this is the older Cosette here. After she grows up, and in part 2 of the movie, which takes place about 10 years later or so. And at that point, Jean Valjean is her legal guardian, and they're living in Paris during the revolution that's happening with all this student uprising against the corrupt government. And it's then that you meet Marius, who is a leader of the biggest student group that's leading this rebellion. And Cosette falls in love with him, and it's kind of the beginning of their love story. But I'm going to have to move on to part 2, so I'm going to have to cut this off. I'll talk a little bit more about the different characters, and then I'll talk about the actual film itself, like the filming style and how it looks on the screen. So that part will come next, okay? I'll see you in part 2. Bye-bye.